Don't lose hope in difficult times. In the quiet moments of your life, when the noise fades and you are left alone with your thoughts, there is a question that gently rises in the heart. Why does this still hurt? You have prayed, you have waited, you have tried to be patient, and yet the wait remains. It is in this space, this fragile, tender space, that Allah is speaking to your soul in ways you may not yet understand. Allah never promised us a life without pain, but He promised us that no pain would be meaningless. Allah says that He does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. This is not a poetic line meant only to comfort. It is a divine truth meant to anchor you. If you are still standing, still breathing, still turning back to Him despite everything, then know that Allah has already placed within you the strength you need for this chapter. So often, we think difficulty means abandonment. We think delay means rejection. But this is not how Allah works. Allah's plan unfolds in the unseen, in places your eyes cannot reach and your heart cannot yet comprehend. What feels like a closed door may be Allah protecting you from a path that would have broken you. What feels like unanswered dua may be Allah preparing you for a gift that requires a stronger heart. The human heart was created to feel deeply, and that is why heartbreak hurts the way it does. Waiting exhausts the soul. Loss leaves echoes. There are nights when sabr feels heavy, when tawakkul feels distant, when you wonder how much longer you can keep going. But this is what sabr truly means. Not the absence of pain, but the refusal to let pain pull you away from Allah. Sabr is choosing Allah even when your heart is tired. Sabr is trusting Him when you don't understand Him. Remember, the Prophet taught us that amazing is the affair of the believer. Every matter is good for them. If ease comes, they are grateful. If hardship comes, they are patient. Not because hardship is easy, but because Allah is near. Not because the pain disappears, but because the heart knows who it belongs to. Healing does not come from controlling outcomes. Healing comes from surrender, from placing what you cannot fix into the hands of the one who can, from saying, Ya Allah, I don't understand this, but I trust you. Tawakkul is not giving up. It is letting go of the illusion that you were ever in control to begin with, and never underestimate the power of remembering Allah in your darkest moments. Dhikr is not just words on the tongue, it is light for the heart. When the world feels unstable, anchor yourself in the one who never changes. When hope feels thin, remind yourself that Allah is Al-Latif, gentle in ways you cannot see yet. When the pain feels endless, remember that Allah is Ash-Shafi, the healer, and no wound reaches you without His permission or His mercy. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not being punished for hoping. You are being shaped. Every tear that brings you closer to Allah is not a loss. It is a return. Every moment of patience is an act of worship. Every breath you take while still trusting Him is a victory. Do not lose hope in difficult times, because hope in Allah is never misplaced. The night may be long, but dawn is written. The heart may ache, but peace is promised. And the soul, no matter how tired, always finds its way back to Allah. Hope in Islam is not an emotion that comes and goes with circumstances. It is an act of worship, rooted in knowing who Allah truly is. When a believer holds on to hope, even when everything appears broken, they are testifying to Allah's names and attributes. They are declaring that Allah is Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, even when mercy feels distant. They are affirming that Allah is Al-Qadir, the all-powerful, even when their own strength has been exhausted. Losing hope is not simply despair over a situation. It is forgetting the vastness of Allah's mercy and the perfection of His wisdom. Allah tells us not to despair of His mercy because despair implies a limit on Allah, and Allah has no limits. When hope fades, the heart begins to believe that the problem is bigger than Allah's ability to solve it, or that the pain is deeper than His compassion. But nothing overwhelms Allah. No wound is too deep. No mistake is too great. No delay is without purpose. Hope is the heart's refusal to place boundaries on what Allah can do. Holding on to hope does not mean denying pain. It means believing that pain does not get the final word. A hopeful heart says, Ya Allah, I do not see the way forward, but I trust that you do. This trust itself is worship because it turns the heart back to Allah instead of away from Him. It keeps the soul from hardening, from becoming bitter, from closing the door to divine help. When hope is alive, the believer continues to make dua, continues to seek forgiveness, continues to return to Allah even after falling. This persistence is beloved to Allah. It reflects a heart that knows its Lord is gentle, patient, and always near. To lose hope is not weakness of faith alone. It is a moment of forgetting who Allah is, and remembering Him restores hope. Not because circumstances change immediately, but because the heart remembers. It is held by the most merciful. Difficult times are often misunderstood as signs of punishment, but in reality they are invitations, quiet, persistent calls from Allah for the heart to return to Him. When life is comfortable, the soul becomes distracted. It leans on its own strength, its plans, its illusions of control. Hardship strips those illusions away. It removes what we were relying on so that we finally see what we were always meant to rely on. Allah alone. Allah does not need our pain, but He uses it to awaken us. Trials soften the heart in ways ease never can. They force us to slow down, to question what truly matters, to recognize our dependence. In moments of loss, the heart cries out in sincerity, not out of habit. This is why hardship can become a mercy. It brings the servant closer to Allah, not through comfort, but through truth. When something breaks in your life, it is often because Allah is making space. Space for humility where arrogance once lived. Space for remembrance where neglect once settled. Space for sincerity where distractions had taken over. What feels like being pushed away is often Allah pulling you nearer, teaching your heart how to call upon Him without barriers. The Quran reminds us that Allah tests those He loves, not to destroy them, but to refine them. Just as fire purifies gold, difficulty purifies the heart. It burns away false attachments and reveals what is real. In those moments, you begin to realize that what you lost was never meant to be your source of security. Returning to Allah does not always look like immediate peace. Sometimes it looks like tears in sujood, whispered du'as in the dark, or a heart that is still hurting but refuses to turn away. And that return, even in brokenness, is beloved to Allah. When Allah delays something you are asking for, it is easy for the heart to assume rejection. The silence feels heavy. The waiting feels personal. But Allah's delays are never denials. They are part of a wisdom far greater than what the human heart can immediately grasp. Allah exists outside of time while we are confined within it. What feels late to us is perfectly timed in the divine plan. Allah sees not only what you want, but what that thing would do to your heart, your faith, and your future. He knows what you are ready for and what would break you if it came too soon. A delayed answer may be Allah protecting you from harm you cannot yet see. It may be Allah strengthening you so that when the blessing arrives, it does not distract you from Him or become a test you cannot carry. Waiting is one of the most painful forms of worship because it demands trust without proof. It forces the heart to rely on Allah when there is no visible reassurance. This is where tawakkul becomes real. To continue making dua while waiting is to say, Ya Allah, I trust your wisdom even when my heart is tired. That trust is beloved to Allah because it reflects true surrender. Sometimes Allah delays a blessing because He wants to give you something better than what you are asking for. And sometimes He delays because He wants to give you the same thing, but with more barakah, more peace and less regret. If something comes before its time, it can become a source of pain instead of joy. Allah is never late. He is never unaware. Every delay is intentional, measured, and filled with mercy. When the heart understands this, waiting no longer feels abandonment. It becomes a quiet conversation between the servant and their Lord, where faith deepens, patience grows, and trust takes root even in the silence. Pain often feels meaningless when you are inside it. It feels like something that happened to you, not for you. But in the divine perspective, pain is never empty. When it turns the heart toward Allah, it becomes a bridge rather than a burden. It becomes a means of elevation, not destruction. The moments that hurt the most are often the ones that soften the heart enough to receive divine light. There are pains that remove illusions. They take away false attachments, false expectations, and false sources of security. What once felt essential begins to fade, and in that emptiness, Allah places something far greater, reliance on Him. When the heart realizes that people, plans, and outcomes can change without warning, it learns to anchor itself in the one who never changes. Pain also teaches sincerity. In ease, the tongue remembers Allah casually. In hardship, the heart calls upon Him honestly. Du'as made in pain come from a place of truth, not routine. Tears shed before Allah are not signs of weakness. They are signs of awareness. They mean the heart recognizes where healing truly comes from. Allah does not promise the believer a life without wounds, but He promises that no wound will be wasted. Every tear is recorded. Every sleepless night is known. Every ache that pushes you closer to Allah is transforming you, in ways you cannot yet see. Pain reshapes priorities. It teaches compassion. It deepens empathy. It strips the soul of arrogance and replaces it with humility. When pain brings the heart closer to Allah, it fulfills a higher purpose. It becomes a form of guidance. Not all guidance comes through comfort. Some comes through loss. And when the heart begins to understand this, pain no longer feels like the enemy. It becomes a teacher, one that leads the soul back to its true home with Allah. Sabr is often misunderstood as silent endurance, as if patience means suppressing pain or pretending that everything is fine. But sabr in Islam is far deeper and far more active than that. Sabr is a conscious choice the heart makes every day to remain anchored to Allah, even when oceans are heavy and answers are unclear. It is not the absence of struggle, it is the presence of faith within struggle. True sabr does not deny grief, fear, or exhaustion. The Prophet himself experienced loss, sorrow, and deep emotional pain, yet he never turned away from Allah. This teaches us that sabr is not about feeling nothing. It is about refusing to let pain pull the heart into despair or resentment. It is holding on to obedience when disobedience feels easier. It is continuing to trust when doubt whispers the loudest. Sabr requires effort. It means restraining the tongue from complaint while allowing the heart to speak honestly to Allah. It means resisting bitterness when life feels unfair. It means choosing remembrance over distraction, prayer over avoidance, and humility over anger. This is why sabr is rewarded without measure, as Allah says. It is heavy on the soul but beloved to Him. In moments of hardship, sabr becomes an act of resistance against hopelessness. It is the heart saying, Ya Allah, I am hurting, but I still believe you are good. This belief transforms suffering into worship. Every moment of restraint, every tear held back from resentment, every return to Allah despite exhaustion is recorded as an act of devotion. Sabr strengthens the soul over time. It builds inner stability that no external circumstance can easily shake. The believer who practices sabr does not become numb, they become rooted. Their faith deepens, their trust matures, and their heart learns to stand with Allah even when everything else feels uncertain. The heart becomes heavy not only because of what it loses, but because of what it tries to hold. Much of our pain comes from gripping outcomes, people, and expectations that were never meant to be fully in our control. We exhaust ourselves replaying scenarios, asking what if, and trying to force certainty where Allah has placed uncertainty. Healing begins the moment the heart releases this burden and returns it to its true owner. Surrender is not weakness, it is clarity. It is the realization that Allah was always in control, and that your responsibility was never to manage the universe, only to turn to Him within it. When the heart surrenders, it stops fighting reality and starts trusting divine wisdom. This is where peace enters. Not because circumstances suddenly improve, but because the inner resistance fades To surrender does not mean you stop making dua or stop striving. It means you strive without attachment. You ask without desperation. You trust without conditions. You say, Ya Allah, I place this in your hands, knowing that whatever you choose will be better for my soul. This shift frees the heart from constant anxiety and replaces it with quiet acceptance. Allah does not ask you to understand everything. He asks you to trust Him. And trust grows when the heart admits its limits. When you stop demanding answers and start seeking closeness, healing unfolds naturally. The weight you were carrying was never yours to hold alone. When control is released, space is created for divine comfort. The heart learns to breathe again. It learns to rest in the knowledge that Allah is gentle, aware, and perfectly just. This surrender transforms pain into patience, fear into faith, and restlessness into a deep, steady calm that comes only from placing your affairs entirely in the hands of Allah. Every hardship the soul encounters is shaping it for something far greater than this world. The believer's journey is not merely about surviving trials, but about being refined through them. Life's difficulties strip the soul of distractions and illusions, reminding it of its true destination. When Eve, writhing familiar, begins to fall away, the heart is gently, and sometimes painfully, redirected toward Allah. This world was never meant to be a place of permanent rest. Its instability is not a flaw, it is a sign. Loss, disappointment, and unanswered questions all whisper the same truth to the soul: this is not your final home. Hardship loosens the heart's attachment to what is temporary and deepens its longing for what is eternal. Through struggle, the soul learns where it truly belongs. Allah uses trials to polish the heart, removing arrogance, heedlessness, and misplaced love. Each difficulty invites the soul to return through repentance, remembrance, and renewed sincerity. The moments that break the heart open are often the moments that allow divine light to enter. In turning back to Allah, the soul begins to find peace not in outcomes, but in closeness. The believer's pain is not wasted effort, it is preparation. Preparation for deeper humility, for stronger reliance, and for a more conscious relationship with Allah. Every test teaches the soul how to let go of the dunya and hold more firmly to faith. Each act of patience is a step forward on the path back to its Creator. As the soul travels through hardship, it is being guided home, not always through comfort, but through truth, not always through ease, but through remembrance. And with every sincere return, the soul becomes lighter, clearer, and more ready for the meeting with Allah that gives meaning to every strew. Jil, it endured. So do not let the darkness convince you that Allah has left you. He is present in every moment you survive, in every breath you take while your heart is still aching. What you are facing is not the end of your story, and it is not greater than the mercy of the one who wrote it. Allah sees the weight you carry, the tears you hide, and the patience you force yourself to practice when you feel empty inside. Hold on to Allah, especially when holding on feels hardest. Turn to Him with a heart that may be cracked, but is still sincere. Trust that what He is doing within you matters more than what you are losing around you. The delay, the pain, the uncertainty are all shaping a soul that is learning how to rely on its Creator alone. Do not lose hope, because hope in Allah is not optional for the believer. It is survival. Even if you cannot see the light yet, walk toward Allah anyway. Even if your faith feels weak, place it in His hands. He never abandons the one who turns back to Him. And when relief comes, it will come not only as ease, but as a heart that finally understands why it had to trust Him all along.